Hope you're ready for another creepy tale from Shanclen Shadow Productions, because this one is gonna be another good one. Oh! Oh, ja, ich Internet, Auto die Internet. Welcome back to another episode of Shanclen Shadow Productions. Yes, it has been a couple weeks since you have seen any of my videos because I have been very busy as of late. But like I said, I took some time away to be able to spend some time with family. Like I said, we did a language immersion, so there was a lot of setup that was involved in that whole thing, and definitely learned a lot as much as I could. But now I am back to be able to go back on the normal schedule for Wednesday uploads and Saturdays and live streams on Mondays. I missed this last Wednesdays, but yes, my sister's back for the summer, so she's gonna be leaving tomorrow. Oh, it's gonna be so sad. Yes, but I want to spend some time with them. So anyways, we're gonna be back on our normal schedule here at Shanclen Shadow Productions. So remember, be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you guys enjoy this content. Let's go ahead and jump into the story. Oh, let us begin. I'm really glad I found your channel. I've always loved the stories about the unexplained, especially those rooted in Native American culture. I lived on the Navajo reservation for 2.5 years, and ever since, I've had a deep respect for the stories and warnings that come out with them. But I've noticed something strange. These days, it seems like every unexplained noise or half-seen shadow automatically gets labeled as a skinwalker, no matter where in the world it happens. And I always think, what would a Navajo witch be doing in the Scottish Highlands or the Black Forest in Germany? That's true. There are other cultures with their own shapeshifters and tricksters and little people. Not every unknown is a skinwalker. That's why your channel stood out to me. You actually understand the subject matter, and you're not just chasing a trend. Yes. You've asked your viewers to share their experiences, so here's mine. From the late 1970s in Crownpoint, New Mexico. It's where I got these rings. I was around 11 or 12 years old when my dad took the job over with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and we moved to Crownpoint, deep in the high desert of the Navajo Nation. The first winter was bone dry, the kind of cold that sinks to your bones and doesn't leave. For a week, the temperature never climbed above 17 degrees. Then, out of nowhere, a snowstorm dropped about 1 inch of powder overnight. Just 1 inch, but it transformed the desert. The whole landscape looked alien. It was a weekend with no school, and I went out exploring. I wandered far out into the desert when I noticed a set of tracks in the snow. They were cloven hoofed prints. At first, I figured they were from a goat or maybe a deer, but something about them caught my attention. My dad was an experienced outdoorsman hunting, fishing, and tracking. He lived for it. I'd been tagging along with him for as long as I could remember, and he had already started teaching me how to track. He always told me to practice whenever I could, so that's what I did. I followed the tracks carefully the way that he taught me, keeping about 10 feet off to the side and never stepping directly on them. Scanning the landscape as I moved, I was excited, eager to impress my dad. Maybe I'd get a glimpse of what made these prints. I watched for signs, feeding, droppings, anything that could help me identify the animal. But there was nothing. No signs of rest, no breaks, no signs of feeding. Just a steady, deliberate path, like whatever it was had a destination in mind. Something felt off. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. It crept in slowly, like a whisper at the back of my neck. With every step I took, that feeling grew. Following those tracks started to feel wrong. Not scary at first, just wrong. Like I was intruding somewhere I didn't belong. Like I was being dared to keep going. The weirdest part? The longer I followed, the more it gnawed at me that I shouldn't be out there. That someone or something might not want me following those tracks. And then, about a mile, maybe 1.5 miles in, it hit me. These were cloven hoof prints, but they were in a straight line. Not the staggered 4-footed kind of track you'd expect from a deer or goat. Not this thing, no. This thing had been walking on 2 legs. Now I knew enough to understand that sometimes an animal's back feet land in the same spot as the front feet. It could look like it was walking upright for a short distance, but this wasn't a short distance. I had been following those prints for over a mile, and the pattern never changed. 2 legs, cloven hooves, steady, purposeful steps. By then, we've lived on the res long enough that I've heard stories. Navajo witches, skinwalkers. The other kids at school would whisper about them, trying to scare me, but I never took them seriously. Until that day, I froze. Every hair on my body stood on end, and I turned around to retrace my steps, scanning every inch of snow along the way, looking for any sign of a 4-legged pattern. But there was nothing, just those same 2 cloven hooves. I went home, and when I told my dad that what I had seen, he laughed at first, thought I was mistaken. But I finally convinced him to come back out with me. He hadn't even gone 100 yards before he stopped dead in his tracks. He stared at the prints for a moment, then said quietly, "Let's go back, and don't tell anyone what you saw." That was the end of it. We only spoke about it one more time years later, and I asked him if he remembered the tracks. He nodded and said, "Son, some things you see you can't explain. And most people won't believe you anyways. That's when it's best to just keep it to yourself." It's been over 40 years since that day. I still don't know what made those prints. I never saw the creature. For all I know, it could have been a hoax, or maybe something escaped from a circus. But I do know how to track, even at that age. I was good at it, and I know this. Those prints were fresh in the snow. They walked for over a mile, and they were made by something with cloven hooves, walking upright on 2 legs. Believe me or not, I know what I saw. Yay! Now let's talk about this. 1970s Crownpoint, New Mexico. So, for those of you who don't know, Crownpoint, New Mexico is kind of like a really, really small town, and I bet back in the 70s it was even smaller than what it is today. It's kind of a really deserty landscape with a few trees here and there, kind of rocky at some places too, but kind of what you would kind of consider a textbook reservation town, to where, you know, unless you live in Crownpoint itself, everyone kind of lives kind of far away from each other. And this is where I got my rings made too. And I've actually heard stories from over there too about they call it Coyote Canyon, when you're first going from I-40 from Thoreau going into Crownpoint to that canyon area that's right there. Actually has some Yanagloshi activity over there, so maybe I'll have to go do an investigation while I'm over there. We'll have to see. But with it snowing and you seeing tracks like that, to where they were kind of cloven hooves, but they kind of leave and just a set of 2, that is very, very kind of creepy. And especially like if you're a pretty decent tracker, and especially if it's kind of fresh snow, it doesn't really matter how perfect you are as a 4-legged animal, you're gonna leave some traces that you're walking on all 4s. You know, you're gonna see like a set of 3 or a set of 2 or a set of 1 just kind of by itself. That kind of gives it away a little bit that you're walking on all 4s. Now with this one, kind of like a human footsteps, there's only 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. That's it. It's easier for a human foot tracks to be captured, but especially with cloven hooves, yeah, it's kind of a dead giveaway that something was walking upright in that snow. So my question I would want to ask the viewer that submitted this story, and again, thank you so much for submitting the story. It's a really great story. Is if you watch this video, I would like to ask, these tracks that you saw, were they coming from your house, or were they kind of just out there in the middle of nowhere, just kind of leading off somewhere? And if so, were they leading to somebody's house, or were they kind of leading over to a canyon area? That kind of really depends on if, you know, it's kind of really risky for a sheep or like a little goat to kind of be out on its own. It's not unheard of. But especially during wintertime, they kind of stick together. And unless somebody out there in the reservation lost one of their sheep, probably got yelling at, especially back in the 70s from their grandmother. But it's very uncommon for a sheep to kind of just go out by itself like that and not return home. Normally they like to kind of stick together with the groups and everything. And so whether it could be a deer too, could be a possibility too. Now, the thing is this, with an inch of snow, it would have happened either in the bright early mornings before the sun actually came up, if it snowed during the day, or the evening. That's another question I have. Like, did it snow overnight and then you woke up and there's a bunch of snow out there? Or, you know, was this happening during the day kind of thing? Because if it was happening during the day, that kind of scratches it out that it was more so of a skinwalker or Yanagloshi, just because those guys can't be out during the daytime. So if this happened when the sun was already up, that goes into another type of deity and being that is more powerful, that doesn't subjugate to the natural law of the sun, and it's already kind of stuck in that form, which could lead to other multiple different things, because there's a lot of demonic entities that have cloven hooves like that. And so if it's kind of just roaming around out there back in the 70s too, I would imagine, like it's not a lot of, they didn't have no cell phones or security cameras or anything like that back in those days, let alone they're lucky probably to even have power if they had it back in those days. So I would just have to say, like, I'm glad you made it out of there. Okay, great tracking skills. Great. You probably made your father very proud of your skills and taking on those teachings of learning how to track and everything, and just being vigilant whenever you're out there in your surroundings and just witnessing and seeing these things, because whenever you would see something like this, you would have to probably check on your neighbors to make sure everyone's okay. And if that was us, we would have probably followed those tracks to see where they actually went and try to see what it actually was all the way. But it was pretty cold from what you're telling me. So yeah, and it does. Reservation cold is kind of different because, like how you said, it goes to your bones. It's deep, like I've been to snows and winters outside of, the reservation, and they're not as brutal as it is in the reservations. So whatever this entity was definitely freezing its hooves off. Just kidding. But yeah, just I would ask you those things, like, was it leading to someone's house? Do you recollect, or any direction of going to someone else's home? Because who knows, maybe it might have been one of your neighbors skinwalking that night and they were just on their way home from whatever they were doing. Yeah, it could be very creepy. Also, when did it snow? Was it during the evening? Was it during the daytime? So that kind of narrows it down a little bit to kind of what entity that you were running into. And just be careful, especially like if you're walking out there in the woods, carry a stick with you, or if you're pretty young, so have a buck knife with you or something like that to be able to protect you out there, because sometimes you're gonna find some pretty crazy stuff out there in the reservation. So again, thank you so much for submitting this video. Very, very creepy indeed. And just imagine, like having that feeling of actually walking up on something that you just didn't really know what you were following up until it was too late. That would have been really, really, really crazy and insane. I'm glad you turned around, glad you're safe, and I'm glad that your father, understood that, sometimes you experience certain things that it's just best to keep to yourself. And that's one thing I've been noticing with a lot of people, is they experience some unnatural things like this, but if they tried explaining it to anybody, they would just be like, oh, you're just crazy, like, I don't know why you telling me this story, I don't believe you, kind of thing. And then it leads into a whole different thing. But here at Shanclen Shadow Productions, your guys' stories are safe here to share your experiences, because maybe somebody else out there has, maybe, who knows, maybe your neighbor back in the day will be able to see this, and maybe that night they actually heard some hooves on their roof that night. Or maybe they're the ones that had the hooves and they were walking home. Anyways, but yeah, I have like a bunch of stories that were submitted to me at Shanclen Shadow Productions. The next one I'll probably send over will be a little compilation of different stories all put together, because they're a little bit shorter than this one. So, but if you would like to submit your story, go ahead and send it over to Shanclen Shadow Productions at gmail.com. So the news that I have, my Instagram account was hacked, unfortunately, while I was out in the reservation, and I came back and it was gone. I tried appealing it, but I couldn't do it, unfortunately. So whatever they did really fucked up everything. Just kidding, no. But anyways, so I have a new Instagram account. It's Clen Warrior SSP, Clen_Warrior_SSP. So go follow me there for any updates for the channel and any daily shenanigans that I run into. So let's go ahead and rebuild the Instagram account. Oh, and then who knows? I was debating if I even wanted to make another one, because security sucks. But anyways, yeah, so I do have some more channel reaction videos coming up too next week. So if you guys have any scary videos you'd like to send me, go ahead and send it over to my TikTok at ShanclenSP as well. So, but thank you all so much for watching. We just hit over 120,000 subscribers on this channel. So woo! Welcome to all the new members here at Shanclen Shadow Productions. For those of you who do not know, I will be going back to the upload schedule with live streams on Mondays, either video reactions or viewer submittal stories on Wednesdays. Wednesdays and my own special videos on Saturdays. So if you're watching this on Wednesday, or what was it, 7:04, so it's probably going to come out tomorrow on Thursday. I apologize. Today was a very busy day, but we should be back on normal schedule next week, and I look forward to speaking with you all and sharing more scary tales. Hope you all have a good morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are. Hook on it. Alright, audio clap. Okay. Anna, real quick, can you come here? Turn the ISO down on this camera. Yeah, real quick. Like, down by 2, go up 1. Okay, cool. Give me that candle too. Careful. Now beat it. Thank you. Cool. We good? Alright, back on it. Okay.